News, Munich.
For more analysis, I spoke to Tyson Barker, a former U.S. State Department official focusing on Ukraine's economic recovery. Well, we know top U.S. officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, traveling to Saudi Arabia for Russia-Ukraine talks in the coming days. European nations apparently won't be represented there. Do you think that any sort of peace deal will be meaningful without European nations kind of represented at the table there?
Well, unfortunately, I think that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I think that in this case in particular, the Europeans are the ones who are going to have to put, all the action into backing up any kind of credible ceasefire, be it the kind of money that's necessary for reconstruction and economic recovery, be it the kind of stabilization that would be necessary for a credible security situation in the country in terms of potential troops. And be it, the future, as President von der Leyen mentioned in her speech at the Munich Security Conference, in terms of accelerated EU accession. So I think that not having Europe at the table undermines the seriousness of these discussions. But these are initial discussions we should take in mind.
Do you think, though, is Europe capable of everything you mentioned there? I mean, it's been 3 years now, nearly, since this war broke out. Why do you think Europe as a whole hasn't come up with its own peace plan?
Well, many people in Europe would say there is a plan, there is a strategy, and the strategy has been, as the Danish Prime Minister said today in Munich, which is for Ukraine to win. The bottom line is this has been a blatant, brazen violation of international law.
But they've known for some time that Europe winning would be, a really remote possibility. Ukraine winning, exactly.
Right. Ukraine winning in this case. But I would say this, if you look at the situation, we all know that the direction of travel right now, and of course President Zelensky has indicated an openness to this, is for a ceasefire. But there are certain things that I don't think that the Ukrainians, and you see this in opinion polls, are not willing to give up. And one of them is their internationally recognized borders. I remember in the last year, Republicans hammered the Biden administration whenever any official did not use the term territorial integrity of Ukraine. That is something that the Ukrainians want, the Europeans want, and many Republicans until quite recently also wanted. So I think that that's going to be something that's going to need to be preserved. But, again, just like this is going to be a process. We're at a beginning phase, and as people have referenced, this war hasn't really just started in 2022. It started in 2014. There were other ceasefire negotiations, including the Minsk agreements. They were not credible. The reason why they weren't credible is because the Russians violated them. There are going to need to be real tripwires to keep the Russians in line because we know they're not trustworthy negotiators.
Tyson, kind of speaking about the process here, we also know Secretary of State Rubio has spoken with his counterpart in Russia, Sergei Lavrov, today, talking not only about, potential peace talks, but also about things, apparently, according to the readout, like reinstating trade and diplomatic ties. Are you surprised, maybe, that those discussions are taking place ahead of a peace deal?
Well, we know from the first Trump administration that one of the negotiating tactics that President Trump likes to use is to flood the zone with conflicting information, and then to choose the line to make sure that he has a range of options at his avail, so that he can choose whichever path he sees as most fit. I'll give an example from the first Trump administration. The negotiations in Helsinki in 2018, where he basically said that he trusted the word of Vladimir Putin over that of his own intelligence community. At the same time, his administration was providing the Ukrainians with lethal defensive assistance, javelins, which is something that the Obama administration refused to do. So I think we're seeing some similar patterns right now, where there is a discussion of, for example, and this is quite ostentatious, Russia rejoining the G7 to become the G8. But at the same time, there are also discussions about what the U.S. has at its disposal in terms of sanctions on Russia's energy exports. So I think we're seeing that same pattern reemerge.
Tyson Barker, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.